Hi, my name is Mindy Lighthipe, and I'm an artist drawing the beauty of nature. Not only do I create art, but I also like to collect art. And I find that framing is one of the things that is very cost prohibitive to have things custom framed. So I wanted to go through a brief tutorial to show you how I use an online framing company called Frame Destinations. It's really affordable and it's easy to work with. So let's get started. I recently started printmaking and doing photogravure, which is a form of solar etching, because I wanted to make my art affordable to collectors. And so I wanted to be able to create works of art that would be between the price range of $25 to $500. Here you see a screenshot of what I did in Frame Destinations. The frog is a hand-painted limited edition hand-pulled etching, and I wanted to have a nice frame for it. Within Frame Destinations, you can upload your image and pick the matte color as well as the frame, and it will show you the image. So this is the image that I chose with the frame that I chose, and I want to show you how I went through actually figuring out the dimensions and the mathematics to be able to get onto the website and purchase what I needed for a custom frame. My etching is a square, and I wanted to create a border around the image because I also needed to place my signature as well as the title and the number of the edition. So I took out my ruler and I started to measure and came up with a 5 by 5 opening for the mat. To make sure my calculations were correct, I took out a piece of tracing paper and drew the square of 5 inches by 5 inches and placed it over the image to make sure that I had enough room to put my signature and title as well as create an equal border. Once I knew the size of the opening, I could then figure out how wide I wanted the mat to be, which would also determine the opening for the frame. I came up with 2.5 by 2.5 all the way around. This gives me a 10 by 10 frame. Now that I have all of the dimensions figured out, I signed the print and placed the tracing paper over the top to make sure that everything was in order. These steps were done before I ordered the frame. I needed this information so that when I went to the website, I was able to log in these dimensions in order to get the mat as well as the frame size correct. I placed my order for the frame, the mat, as well as the backing board, the hanging elements, and the acrylic. I use acrylic because it is easier to ship. After unwrapping the plastic, I was able to get all of the different components. The first thing that you need is a flathead screwdriver, and you just pull up the backing part of the board, and all of the elements, the mat, the plexiglass, and the backing board is already there. Then the next thing to do is to assemble the mat onto the backing board and place the art in place. Before placing the art, I create a hinge that attaches the mat to the backing board. The mat needs to be on the opposite side, so it needs to be reversed, and I use a piece of repositionable tape to place it so that there's a hinge to place the artwork properly in the opening of the mat. Once the hinge is made, I then place the artwork and position it so that it is situated properly within the opening. I then use the tape, which is archival, and I create hinges. I place 2 small tabs on the back of the artwork and then secure it onto the backing board by placing another piece of tape over each hinge. The art is now also on a hinge. The art is now properly placed in the mat with the backing board, and it is now time to put either glass or what I'm using is acrylic. The acrylic comes with a plastic coating which needs to be removed, and it's best to get it started on the corner and also hold it on the edges so that you don't get fingerprints on the surface. It makes cleaning and installation a lot easier. Because I'm working with acrylic, It's important to get all of the hair and dust off before you finish the framing. I use a plastic cleaner rather than Windex because I'm working on plastic, and I use a Bounty paper towel because it has less fibers. So it's really important to clean it up before you put the frame together. With the acrylic free from dust, I'm now able to place it in the frame. I gently turn it to the side, place it in the frame, and then the image is upside down, exposing the points, which I then use the flathead screwdriver to push down. This holds the image in place in the frame. Frame Destination provides all of the hardware that you need to hang the piece. It comes with 2 D-rings, the screws, and the wire. The first thing that you want to do is measure from the top. Usually it's about 1/3 of the way down, and I used my ruler with the opening to create a small pencil dot. The dot shows me where I need to put the screw. Using a Phillips head screwdriver, I screw in the screw through the D-ring by the little dot that I made. I do this for each side, and if you have difficulty, you can use a push pin to start the hole to put the screw in. It makes it easier to get the screw started. With the D-rings secured in place, I now have the wire that I'm going to measure, which will hang the piece on the wall. I usually undo it and go at least 3 inches to 4 inches beyond the width of my frame. This gives me enough to tie the knot on each side and then wrap it. I used a wire cutter, but you could also use a pair of scissors, but be careful that you don't ruin a good pair of scissors. There is a special knot that you use when you attach the wire to the D-ring. I believe it's called a square knot, and Frame Destination supplies you with a step-by-step diagram of how to do it. Once you get both sides attached, you then can wrap the excess wire, coiling it around the wire, and then you can cut it so that it's short. You want to make sure that it's taut so that it doesn't sag, and the frame will hang nicely on the wall. The last step is to place 2 small plastic bumpers down on the bottom of the frame. They have self-adhesive on them, and all you need to do is peel them from the backing, place them on, and this helps protect the wall so that the frame doesn't bang, and it acts as a cushion. Now look how easy that was. Really, really simple and easy to put this together. The biggest thing, I believe, is the measurements in the beginning to ensure that you have the right frame and mat. For the next one, I'll show you a little bit different print with more complicated measurements. This etching is a single color, and I felt that a really nice wood frame would go great with it. Frame Destination has a lot of wood grain frames, and this one had a gray selection, and I thought it would go really nice with this print. The print is a little bit of an unusual size, and so I had to figure out the calculations, and I'll walk you through that so that you can see how I figured it out before I actually purchased the mat and the frame. To figure out the dimensions for the opening, the mat width, and the opening for the frame size, I did exactly the same thing I did with the frog. The dimensions were a little bit different, and I wanted to make sure I had enough room for my signature and the title. So I made the mat opening 8.5 inches wide all the way around, and this time I made the mat width 2 3/4 inches, which gives me a mat size of 5.5 by 5.5. The opening was 8.5 by 8.5, which when I figured that all out, it came to 14 by 14. So I made the mat a little bit bigger so that I could have an even number and not have to make my frame size with quarter or different dimensions. It was much easier for me to do it this way. So the mat is just a little bit bigger, and it took some time to figure this out, but it was definitely worth it because it ended up having the print was a little bit bigger than the frog, and so it had a nice mat all the way around. Once I had the dimensions for the mat and the frame, I was able to order the whole complete package from Frame Destinations. As I stated before, I chose the sort of driftwood gray wood grain frame because I thought it went the best, and I also continued to use the acrylic glazing instead of glass. I'm speeding up the video because it's the same process, but I just wanted to show you again how simple and easy it was to put the whole thing together. I highly recommend that if you are an artist or an art collector and want to have high quality frames that are affordable and easy to put together, that you visit Frame Destinations. This is Mindy Lighthipe for Drawing the Beauty of Nature. You can see more of my work at www.mindylighthipe.com. Happy art collecting, framing, and all things creative.